Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to The Elder Scrolls. My name is Camel, and today I have a treat for you. Before that though, social media links can be found down in the description. Be sure to click them all and check out the merch store where you can get sick Elder Scrolls related merch, like this Camel Elder Scroll blanket designed by yours truly, or the newest, hottest product on the market, Smoke Skooma Worship Camel. It's got Daedric text on the sleeves. And there's even a skooma pipe and a skooma bottle somewhere on the back. I'm hoping it's in the shot. It's truly an item that would make Todd Howard proud, so get yours today. Again, link in the description. Also, make me proud and come hang out on Twitch where we streamed the entire playthrough of what we're going to be talking about today. Now, purely based on the fact that you are watching this video, I'm going to assume that, much like me, you love the Elder Scrolls universe and its vast array of deep and sprawling fantasy games. Games that shape us, games that change us. From the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, to the Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim, to the Elder Scrolls Online, to the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, to the Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall, to the Elder Scrolls Blades, to the Elder Scrolls Arena, to the Elder Scrolls Legends, to the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard, to the Elder Scrolls Legends Battlespire, to the Elder Scrolls Travels Stormhold. Yes, that's right. One of the long-lost Elder Scrolls games, the Elder Scrolls Travels Stormhold. What's that? You haven't played Stormhold? Well, it's little wonder, as most people haven't even heard of the Elder Scrolls Travels Stormhold, let alone played it. Now, there are many reasons that this game has been forgotten to the forgetfulness of time, as the Elder Scrolls Travels Stormhold released in 2003 on mobile. It was produced by Virtual Studios, which at the time was a sister company to Bethesda Softworks, and it was a subsidiary of ZeniMax Incorporated. So this game, Stormhold, was not made by BGS. Stormhold's dev team was just 5 people. And while it might be laughable by today's, modern gaming standards, I will say that its ambition was genuinely impressive, especially for the time that it was created, and the platform that it was created for, mobile phones. In the early thousands. Now, at the time, there was no app store where you could just go and download a game. Externally purchased mobile phone games were really not a big market at the time. I mean, do you remember 2003 when mobile phones looked like this? Ugh. And phone games looked like this. Well, not to show my age or anything, but I sure do remember those times. And I think that during this period, having Stormhold on my mobile phone would have been slapping. But regardless of its potential quality within the context of the time it was created, and the platform it was created for, its timing for the downloadable mobile gaming market, in my opinion, was about 10 years premature. I think the first time I ever downloaded a mobile game onto my phone was in 2013. 10 years after Stormhold released. Now, along with Stormhold being well before its time in regards to its scope and concept for the platform it was released for, it was also well before its time in regards to accessibility, as you needed to have one of these specific phones to play it. And if you didn't catch that, one of these phones. These are the only mobile phones that you could potentially get Stormhold on. Now, along with having one of those specific phones, you also needed to be with exactly the right mobile phone provider, as each mobile carrier that had Stormhold available only had it available for a small selection of the phones that the game would work on. So even if said carrier had all the mobile phones that Stormhold would work on, only specific mobile carriers could sell Stormhold to specific mobile models. As you can see, just explaining that part, this process of purchasing and acquiring Stormhold is already super annoying. Which made acquiring the game extremely limiting to its already extremely limited market. So once you get the right mobile phone and you get the right provider, you then have to go to the Elder Scrolls Travels website, where along with some nifty Stormhold themed mobile screensavers and backgrounds, you could also find varying instructions on how to purchase and download Stormhold from your specific mobile carrier for your specific mobile phone model. And don't forget, this is 2003. This is about 5 years before I'd even heard of internet access on a mobile phone. So it really is little wonder why no one's played the Elder Scrolls Travels Stormhold, let alone even heard of it. And the marketing campaign wasn't exactly strong, as the only advertising that Bethesda did for the game was in the flyer screen in the installer for the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind's Blood Moon expansion. I mean, it's not exactly prime-time real estate for an ad, is it? Stormhold was also never re-released. So if you want to play it these days, you are really going to have to work for it. Firstly, trying to find ripped mobile phone files from 2003, in the depths of the internet, is like trying to find a specific grain of sand in the Alakir Desert. Luckily for me, a very generous viewer sent me the files recently, and well, I don't think I can provide any links legally. If you do want to try these games out, I would suggest you go to Google and you type in an Elder Scrolls Travels setup guide. Then click the first Reddit link. Everything you need is there. Good luck, you'll need it. So once you do find these mythical files, getting the emulator to work properly and run the game properly is more complicated than trying to hack into the Pentagon with a Casio calculator watch. I won't bore you with the details, but I felt like I was being tortured by Sheogorath, becoming madder and madder trying to get this goddamned game to work. But I did it. So once we pass the computer trials of Kinnereth and actually get these ancient J2ME mobile files running on a PC, what do we have to look forward to? What is Stormhold really like? What did you miss in 2003? Well, as impressive as it was for its time, in short, I would sum Stormhold up with, I played it so you don't have to. Also, your experience with the game will depend on what version of the game you get, as, given the extremely limited memory on mobile phones back in 2003, the game had to be super small. So Stormhold was developed in several different versions that were different sizes, that had different content basically, so that they could load it onto as many mobile phones as possible at the time. So the smallest version of the game has just 8 dungeons, whereas the biggest version of the game has 36 dungeons, and there's also a middle size in between. How many dungeons that has? No one knows, because the files don't exist for it anymore. Now, these various sized versions of the game had varying mechanics and features across the differing versions, and we'll touch on those throughout the video. And to give you an idea of how seriously limited the file size for the game had to be to work on mobile phones, or even fit onto a mobile phone, I have the files for the largest version of the game, and the game file size is 167 kilobytes, not gigabytes. Not megabytes, kilobytes. 1 gigabyte is 1 million kilobytes. This game is 167 kilobytes. Hell, even this relatively low resolution JPEG of Todd Howe that I found on my desktop from my personal collection is more than double the size of the largest version of the entire game of Stormhold. So this game is smaller than your will to live will be after playing it. But now let's get on to the actual game. Now, the plot of Stormhold is very basic. You're a prisoner, how original, in Stormhold Prison in Black Marsh. The prison warden, an imperial man named Quintus Varus, which also happens to be the medical name of a deformity of the pinky toe. Oof, someone call a tow truck. Anyway, Quintus Varus, the prison warden, not the sore toe, is responsible for the corruption of the prison's inhabitants through his relentless excavations in search of the Storm Crystal, which is also referenced as the Stormhold Crystal on and off throughout the game. They couldn't quite decide what to call it, apparently. Now, of course, we must defeat the mad Quintus Varus and retrieve the Stormhold Crystal for ourselves and liberate the prisoners. Now, I'm not judging, but generally, people in prison are there for a reason, and it's probably not the best idea to just release a bunch of them. Anyway, let's not take the plot too seriously. I mean, Bethesda didn't, why should we? And while what I just explained to you is basically the entire depth of the plot and lore for the Elder Scrolls Travels Stormhold, I will speculate on potential deeper lore later on towards the end of the video, as I think that maybe the Ayleid and the Hist were involved in what transpires in-game. But as I said, that's for later on. So you create your character and select your class from Barbarian, Battle Mage, Knight, Nightblade, Rogue, Sorcerer, and Spellblade. Now, the Spellblade class is only available on the largest version of the game, which is what I played, and I think at the time it was only available on the Nokia 3650. Now, all of the classes have slightly different starting stats and different starting items. Interestingly, they also have a race assigned to them, which means nothing because you never actually see your character, and you can't change your race, so it's basically meaningless. See guys, ZeniMax was woke even back in 2003. They were telling us that race doesn't matter. Anyway, we start the game in the Warden's camp, the central part of the game. Literally, it's the center of the map. It's a safe area where enemies won't attack you, but even better, there are 6 friendly characters that you will be interacting with a lot. We'll get back to them a little later on. So from here, from the Warden's camp, we can go north, we can go east, we can go south, or we can go west. Now at this point, we will also notice that the game sounds like this. Nothing. No music, no sounds. This is again a limitation of the required tiny file size of the game to fit onto mobile phones back in 2003. So we will be banging out some Daggerfall tunes for this video. And with our new retro soundscape, let's wander in any of the cardinal directions where we will shortly run into some enemies, where the simplest combat of all time is revealed. Even Arena had more advanced combat than this. It's as basic as 1, 2, 3, or in Stormhold's case, it's as simple as 1 or 3, or whatever the hell the attack button is. You literally just spam that as fast as you can to smack your enemy to death faster than they smack you to death. Now, melee combat really is the only option, as while there are spells in the game, spell selection requires cycling through every single spell that your character knows. By the time you find the spell that you want to use, you will be dead. The only spell that I used and kept on cast was Heal. It's a nifty and easy way to instantly get a chunk of health back. Apart from that, using Magicka for combat purposes is multitudes more inferior to just bonking your foes on the head with a weapon. But if you do want to use magic, to learn a spell, you'll have to find a scroll. You find these all throughout the game, just like any other loot. You use the scroll to learn its spell. It's as simple as that. Now, there are 3 different colored bars at the bottom left of the screen. And I'm sure you know what this is. I mean, come on, you've played Elder Scrolls games before. The red bar is health. The green bar, that's right, is Magicka. Yes, the green bar is Magicka. And the blue bar is stamina. Yeah, figure that one out. Now, if we go into the menu, we can see our stats, our name, our level progress, health, magicka, stamina, any ailments we have, our attributes, all the stuff you'd expect. Our inventory, that speaks for itself, but a very important note, Stormhold has a maximum carry capacity of 24 items, including equipped items, and items do not stack. So you can very literally only carry 24 items, which is a massive issue as your bags will fill up within like 2 minutes. I'll talk more on this later because it really negatively impacts the gameplay loop ratios. Anyway, the skills menu just shows you your skills and what level your skills are. The spells menu will show you your known spells, although it doesn't actually say what the spells do. But then again, using them is super inferior to just using melee combat, so who cares what the spells do. And then we have save, load, quit, and the help menu, which isn't actually that helpful at all. So with this new epic knowledge of how the game works, we can continue dungeon diving, killing the fairly limited array of different enemies that are basically just the same 4 or 5 dudes slightly reskinned. There's prisoners, thieves, she's hot, some more prisoners, Joe Rogan, it's good to see him. There's some prison guard kind of blokes, the overseers they're called, and then there is a selection of zombie fellas. Some glowing ones from Fallout, again, it's nothing crazy. So we dive into dungeons, pummel enemies, loot their corpses, find treasure chests, level up, and then realize that exploring in this game is extremely confusing and disorientating. It's basically impossible to have any idea of where you actually are and where you have just been by just looking at the game world. I mean, everything looks the same. Now, there is a mini-map which helps a lot, and you can make it larger. This is honestly how I played most of the game. I just played the mini-map essentially. Now, there is no actual complete map of Stormhold, as the dungeons are generated somewhat randomly, so you just have the mini-map, which I'm very thankful for, but it's not quite enough. And while we're on the topic of the map, you are the green dot, blue dots are loot, red dots are enemies, and purple dots are warp points. Now, the warp points will teleport you back to the Warden's camp when you walk into them. These are very handy. Now, at first there will only be 4 dungeons available, but as you progress and level up your character, new dungeons will open up as Warden Quintus Varus excavates further and further into the ground, searching for this mythical Stormhold crystal. So because these new dungeons are constantly opening up in all 4 cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, this means that you'll be running back through areas over and over again that you've already cleared out. Even with the assistance of the larger minimap and my genuine, impeccable sense of direction, I spent a lot of my time lost in this game, and not in an immersive kind of way, more in a "where in oblivion am I?" kind of way. And while confusing, some of the dungeons do have somewhat entertaining names. Like in the west, we go from the Acolyte's Plea into the Priest Hole. Oh dear. Careful, Zenimax, I think you just stole the church's IP. While we are out and about, however, we will find a fairly limited array of weapons and armor, with about 4 or 5 of each weapon type, and about the same numbers for each armor slot. Interestingly, none of the armor has a light or heavy armor type, except the chest piece. So the light and heavy armor skills really aren't that important at all. We will also find crystals, which are basically the potions of the game. We'll also find scrolls, which upon using will teach us a spell, and we'll also find gift items, which we can give to certain NPCs in exchange for goods and services. But the biggest pain in the ass that we will encounter are the ailments. These are quite simply debuffs, and some of them are very crippling. And while there is a fairly substantial list of them apparently in the game, I only encountered a few. Vampirism makes the background red and your health drains per second. However, killing enemies regens health, but if you run out of enemies, you're just going to die. There is delusions, which makes way more enemies spawn, the idea being that you're hallucinating, although these imagined monsters act and interact just like real ones and they can kill you. Grievous Harm is just a bleed tick that will eat through your health quick smart, and Blind is easily the most hated ailment. It makes the floor black and removes the mini-map, which, as I stated earlier, is the only map, and the only way I had any idea of where I was at any given time. So even with the mini-map, I was lost most of the time. So without it, you're really truly screwed. At one point, I got blinded, and I had to spend like 20 minutes just probing in random directions, hoping to walk onto a warp point, which I eventually managed, but it wasn't fun. It wasn't a fun experience. Now, you can also use Ailment Crystals to remove ailments. Or, a hack that I found is to keep camping. Camping in-game is just resting, sleeping, waiting, whatever you want to call it. So you just keep camping and eventually the ailment will fade. Sometimes it happened on the first go, other times it took 5 or more, but it always seemed to work. So once we've killed and looted enough, our inventory will be full, and we'll need to head back to the Warden's camp and make use of those friendly NPCs that I spoke about earlier. Now, it's important to know that in Stormhold, the currency of the game is aids. That's right, you need to get aids off of the other characters. Aid points, that is. Each NPC will have a specific method in which you gain aid points with them. Then you can trade or spend these aid points into that NPC for various services. Firstly, there are 4 trainers who you can gain aid points with by giving them gift items. Gift items are just miscellaneous items you find throughout your dungeon crawling that serve no other purpose, other than to be given to NPCs for aid points. Now, each trainer will give you between 0 and 3 aid points for a specific gift item. Luckily, the UESP, the unofficial Elder Scrolls Pages wiki, has this very handy list here that shows you which NPCs will give you the most aid points for a particular gift item, as the game itself doesn't actually tell you this. So as always, the UESP comes through for us. Now, the 4 trainers are Arantamo, who trains the Conjuration, Destruction, and Speechcraft skills, Celegil, who trains the Light Armor, Longblade, and Restoration skills, Favela Dralor, who trains the Alteration, Illusion, and Shortblade skills, and Vander, who trains Axe, Blunt Weapon, and Heavy Armor skills. Between the 4 of them, they cover the 12 player skills in-game. Of course, the 13th and most important skill is actually getting the damn game to work in the first place.
I am not amused. Die, fetcher!
Anyway, the other 2 NPCs are more dynamic and provide goods and services as well. Firstly, we have Beneca. Now, you can give him all of your unwanted weapons, armor, and scrolls. In exchange for his aid points, you can purchase filled crystals from him. Now, you can also find crystals throughout your dungeon delving. They, again, essentially take the place of potions, providing varying restorative and magical effects to you. Most are basically useless, but some of them are must-haves. The warp crystal is easily the most important one, as it will warp you, it will teleport you back to the Warden's camp, aka safety, when you activate it. This will save you a lot of travel time instead of running back and forth between dungeons and the Warden's camp, just like using one of the warp points, the purple squares on the map. Or, warp crystals can be used as a perfect way to escape an otherwise deadly situation. Ailment crystals will cure any ailments you have, except for depression caused by the wait for the Elder Scrolls 6, of course. Now, ailments, as mentioned, these are basically debuffs, most of which are extremely crippling, so having some ailment crystals at hand is always useful. Heal crystals will heal you. These are basically asinine, as you can just camp anywhere and heal to full health anyway. Magica crystals restore magicka, but honestly using magic in this game is a real pain in the Telvanni Tower, so these won't get used either. Stamina crystals restore fatigue. These are also basically useless as your stamina regens naturally, and it does so at a fairly fast rate, so you really won't be needing these stamina crystals either. Experience crystals are worth snapping up with any spare aid points you have with Beneca, as they will provide the player 1 XP point. You need 10 XP points to level up. These are usually gained by leveling up a skill, but these experience crystals are a great way to get in an extra level or two. Recovery crystals restore both health and magicka. Again, basically useless, just camp, and you'll regen all those stats. Pain crystals increase your damage output for a time. Guardian crystals increase your armor rating for a time. Camp crystals allow you to camp safely, meaning you won't be interrupted by an enemy when you camp, but to be honest, this happens so rarely that these camp crystals are basically useless as well. Grey aura crystals will kill weak enemies, dark aura crystals will kill normal enemies, and black aura crystals will kill strong enemies. Now, these aura crystals can come in handy, but they aren't worth hanging on to, given the extremely small maximum carry capacity our character has, 24 slots, so filling up a bunch of those slots with aura crystals, it's not really worth it. So in short, you want to make sure to always have a warp crystal so that you can get back to the camp quickly and safely, and you will also want to carry 1 or 2 ailment crystals as to get rid of those nasty ailments, but that's about it in regards to useful crystals that you'd actually want to carry on you. Everything else you can achieve without the use of a crystal in an equally easy manner. And of course, we want to save on inventory space as much as we can, so wandering around constantly with as little crystals as we can is great. And finally, we have Helga. We can give her our unwanted crystals. As I just mentioned, a chunk of them aren't particularly useful, so she's a great way to get rid of them and also get something back. In exchange for our crystals, we will of course get aid points from her. We can use these aid points with Helga for her services, such as enchanting, which will permanently improve the enchanted weapon and armor. There is Bless, which will give us a temporary buff. There is Cure. Now this is the same as an ailment crystal and will just remove any ailments, any debuffs or negative effects on your character. And then we have Warp, which is super handy as it will teleport you back to where you last warped from. So in the same way that a warp crystal or a warp point will teleport us back to the Warden's camp to safety, using warp through Helga will warp us back the other way and back out into the dungeon, right to the spot from which we last used the warp ability. So between the warp crystals and the warp points bringing us back to camp and Helga warping us back out into the field, we can save tons of travel time. Thank the 9 divines, because honestly I was sick of running around for minutes and minutes on end, just lost trying to get back out to where I was. And lastly, we have recovery, which will restore our health, fatigue and magicka. Now this service is free, which puts it on par with simply just camping, although this recovery option is probably a little bit faster. So there is the home base, the Warden's camp, and all of the friendly NPCs, all of the goods and services, and all the different types of items in the game and their uses. So actually playing Stormhold, it's pretty easy. You run out and find a place you haven't been to yet, you kill everything, you loot everything, and then you basically repeat this. Now I did run into some enemies that were too tough for me, but I found this really silly cheese mechanic, in which you just take a few steps backwards from an enemy until they aren't on your screen, and then you just camp and it restores all of your stats. This makes escaping combat laughably easy. The only problem I did run into was getting cornered in a dead end with several enemies coming at me. So backing out backwards wasn't really an option. But once you've leveled up a bunch, this really isn't much of an issue at all. The problems that I just explained to you only happened when I first started the game. Now, you also really don't want to die in Stormhold, as if you die, this will happen.
Hey, you're finally awake.
Not really. You'll just be taken back to the Warden's camp. You will lose all of your items in your inventory permanently except for the equipped items. Now, loot and enemies do not respawn in Stormhold, so there is a limited number of items that you can get, therefore a limited number of aid points you can get, so you really don't want to lose any items at any point. Now, as we level up and progress, occasionally Prison Warden Quintus Varus will appear and say things like this. You are blessed to be part of my plans to rid the Empire of evil. Do your part and your days here shall have a minimum of pain. I know you steal from us, but you are an effective tunnel rat. Don't be greedy and I shall overlook your indiscretions. Do you know the value of crystals? I do, so dig all you want, but do not think to take the one I value. It would mean your life. Now, you can actually see Varus devolve as he becomes more and more corrupt every time he shows up. Eventually, Helga will say this. Varus is on his way to the Storm Crystal in the XX. Please hurry. You must stop him. No idea what XX is, but this is the signal to go out, find and kill Varus and retrieve the Stormhold Crystal. Soon enough, you will encounter the big boss Warden Varus and sink him faster than a beer at 5 PM on Friday. If you walk into the crystal / activate it, whatever the hell happens, you will get this. Warden Quintus Varus lies at your feet. In your hands, the Stormhold Crystal, pulsing with the distilled power of the priests of a nearly forgotten religion. The crystal cannot hold the evil of the world, but it just might hold enough to undo the corruption of this camp. Corruption cleared, Varus and his overseers defeated, the innocents in the camp may now go free. Wearily, you head to the surface. You first set foot in Stormhold as a prisoner, but you shall emerge as a hero. Congratulations! You have won! You can play a new game or seek new adventures in the Elder Scrolls Travels Dawnstar, available now. I will make a video about that, don't worry. So yay, we did it! We beat the game! What a journey that was. It took me about 8 hours, but I did that while streaming, so it would probably take about 5 or 6 hours if you did it just playing the game. But honestly, for a mobile game, from 2003, a 6 or so hour dungeon crawler RPG on a mobile phone, it's pretty hot content. In the context of today's gaming world though, man was Stormhold a slog. It makes Arena actually look advanced, which when compared to Stormhold, Arena was advanced. Now, my biggest issue with Stormhold, beyond its lack of accessibility in the modern day, is its gameplay loop. It's all wacky. The ratios are totally off. And all of that comes down to the stupid 24 item inventory cap and its lack of a complete map. You go out, you get lost for 5 minutes in a dungeon, you have no idea where you are, you find some stuff, you kill some stuff, you loot some stuff, and within 2 minutes of doing that, your inventory is full. So then we go back to base, we spend easily up to 5 minutes doing inventory management, giving the right items to the right NPCs, and then we rinse and repeat. So 50% of the game is spent doing inventory management, 30% of the game is spent being lost in dungeons, and about 20% is actually spent encountering enemies, killing enemies, getting loot, upgrading your items, having fun doing the normal Elder Scrolls stuff. Yes, exploration and inventory management are a part of all Elder Scrolls games, but again, like I said, the ratios are off. They're so off. It should be, like 5% inventory management, not 50%. So these gameplay loop ratios are really what killed the game for me. I don't really mind the bad graphics. I don't mind the simple mechanics. It just wasn't that fun to play. But of course, that's coming from a modern era perspective. So I both didn't really enjoy the game due to its limitations, and I'm also like, many hats off to this game existing on a mobile phone in 2003. That's really crazy to me. So if the inventory size was much larger, like 100 items or something, and if there was a complete map so you actually knew where you were and where you were going, I think Stormhold would have been genuinely much more fun for me to play. But again, it's hard to get actually mad at Stormhold given its game file size is half the size of a relatively low resolution JPEG. pretty, again, impressive. I would actually love to see someone recreate Stormhold as like a Skyrim mod, you know, with Skyrim graphics. I think that would be a really cool way to fix some of the issues with it and also make it really accessible to everyone who wants to play it. Anyway, as I mentioned at the start of the video, I have the largest version of Stormhold, which had the unique feature of the Spellsword class. But what were the other versions like? Well, I don't have access to those versions, so I can't show you, but I can tell you. On the smaller versions of the game, there was a feature called Treasure Run, where certain squares on the map in a dungeon would trigger a timed treasure run, and you had to run to the corresponding square. Upon doing so, you would be rewarded with treasure. Treasure run. You do the running, you get the treasure. And apparently you also got rewarded with items that were otherwise unavailable in the game. This feature was rather broken, as items you would get from the treasure run would greatly increase the power of your character. Now, the treasure run was only a feature on the smallest version of the game, which had about 8 dungeons. Now, 8 dungeons was probably not enough for you to level up enough and get enough gear to then actually beat the boss. So they put in this treasure run feature to kind of boost your character to a point where you could actually kill the boss. Now, in addition to this, there was another unique feature to either the smaller version or the medium version. I can't say which. All I do know is it's not in the largest version. If anyone has access to the smaller version or the medium version, please let us know in the comments. But anyway, this feature was called the Oracular Altar. This thing seems to be a replacement for friendly NPCs, as it's kind of all the things all the NPCs do in one altar. As it allows you to recover stats, you can give it your unwanted items, it can train you in skills, you can buy crystals off of it, literally just providing all of the services that all 6 of the NPCs in this version that we saw provide to you. Now, I don't know where this thing was located, I don't know if it actually replaced the NPCs or if you could find it out and about in the dungeons, but I think the Oracular Altar would have been a perfect addition to add into the game and put in a few dungeons so that you could actually clear your inventory while out and about and not have to constantly go back to the Warden's camp to clear your inventory. Now, along with these unique features, there's also a bunch of cut content that is still rattling around in the game files, which is actually kind of annoying that they left them there. Because of course, these unused game files are taking up space, which, as we know, when it came to Stormhold, memory space, game file space, was super precious. So they could have taken these files out and, you know, added more inventory space, for example. Anyway, there appear to have been plans for a lockpicking system, as there is an unused security skill. If you don't know, in the earlier Elder Scrolls games, the lockpicking skill was actually called the security skill. Now, along with the security skill, there's also some unused items: the prisoner's pins, the thieves' tools, and the master thief's kit. I am very glad they didn't introduce a security system. One is just another feature where it's like, this isn't really adding anything to the game, especially to a game that's missing so much anyway. And also, the thieves' tools and such would be more items to fill up your already ultra-limited inventory space. So I'm very glad they didn't put this in the game. Now, there's also some things called hollow crystals, twin hollow crystals, and quad crystals. It's thought that these were an intended mechanic in which your player character would become corrupted, like half of the footage for this video did. Anyway, it's thought that these hollow crystals were to be used to remove the corruption from your player character. This is backed up by Favela Dralor's line of unused dialogue, in which she says, "The darkness consuming me is not the one I chose. I need hollow crystals." Following this, there is an item called Vander's head. Vander, of course, being a friendly NPC. So this head was intended to be obtained after you became corrupted and then killed Vander and took his head. I'm also glad they didn't introduce this feature because I don't want to kill Vander. And there's also 2 unused items called Varus's blood and Varus's effigy. These were likely cut because when you kill Varus, the last boss, he drops the Stormhold Crystal and you beat the game. So there really isn't any point in having him drop other items, as you'll never get anything for them. Because when you beat the game just stops and you have to start a new game or continue from your last save. Point being, it's not a play-on game. Also, I've got a little bonus Easter eggy thing for you, as 4 of the 6 friendly NPCs in Stormhold are actually named after characters in the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, which was released a year before Stormhold. Celegil is named after a wood elf woman named Celegil. Arantamo is named after a dark elf man named Crazy Legs Arantamo. Helga is named after a Nord woman named Helga. And Favela Dralor is named after a Dunmer woman named Favela Dralor. And before you ask, I do not believe that these characters in Morrowind and Stormhold are the same NPCs. They're not the same characters within the Elder Scrolls universe. As one of them's dead in Morrowind, and like half of them are different races in different games, so no. That theory in the bin. Anyway, there's a nice little Easter egg for you for making it this far. So now that we've completely deconstructed the Elder Scrolls Travel Stormhold, and we've basically inspected every aspect of the entire game, let's take a closer look at the lore and setting and see if we can figure out what's actually happening here. As what is explained in the game is, pretty vague and cliche. Evil Warden, magic crystal, not that satisfying, so let's see what we can do. So we are in Stormhold Prison, which is run by the reputed lunatic Warden Quintus Varus. He is afflicting the prisoners with slave labor, forcing them to dig and excavate deeper and deeper within the subterranean hell known as Stormhold Prison. As he madly searches for the Stormhold Crystal, which is said to pulse with the distilled power of the priests of a nearly forgotten religion. This crystal has the ability to store and unleash corruption, which makes it a very dangerous artifact, as seen throughout the events of the Elder Scrolls Travel Stormhold, where ironically, Warden Quintus Varus seeks the Stormhold Crystal as so he may remove all corruption and evil from the Empire, and also become the greatest hero of the Empire, the Slayer of Evil. But in his quest to acquire the Stormhold Crystal, Warden Quintus Varus generates and unleashes more corruption and evil, resulting in the deaths of many prisoners, the corruption and devolving of himself and his own overseers, and the creation of armies of undead. And according to Helga, even the earth itself now oozes corruption as a result of the Warden's deranged and delusional actions. So the in-game lore and explanations don't get super deep, nor do they really explain what the Stormhold/Storm Crystal is. So let's see if we can figure out something a bit more satisfying, or at least give it some context within the Elder Scrolls universe. To begin, we know that the Elder Scrolls Travel Stormhold is set in the city of Stormhold, which is located in the northwestern section of Blackmarsh, which is home of the Argonians. Now, the history of Stormhold is quite interesting and might just play a part in understanding the events of the Elder Scrolls Travel Stormhold, as Stormhold was originally founded and built by the Aylieds. More specifically, it was constructed by the Barsacbic Aylieds following the Narfencel Schism, in which the Aedra worshipping Aylieds were exiled from Cyrodiil by the Daedra worshipping Aylieds. These now exiled Mer became known as the Barsacbic Aylieds and fled to the waters of Blackmarsh, where they constructed several cities, Stormhold being one of them. Interestingly, in Ayleid, the language of the Aylieds, the city's name is actually Silyanorn, which means acorn in Ayleid, but it means library in Barsacbic Ayleid, that being the language of the Barsacbic Aylieds. So the elves that actually built the city would have considered it as a library, not an acorn, which is kind of annoying because I had a theory that the Acorn was the Stormhold Crystal and it was built, as a seed to unleash corruption. But that theory went down the drain after I looked at some translations from Ayleid to Barsacbic Ayleid and realized that Acorn means library in Barsacbic Ayleid. Now, after the fall of the Ayleid empires, the remaining city of Stormhold was inhabited by the native Argonians, along with, of course, the Imperials when the Empire attempted to claim Blackmarsh, at which point they built an Imperial prison here in Stormhold. Now, given these historic layers and different cultures that have lived here and called Stormhold home, we can get a couple of ideas as to what the Stormhold Crystal is and who the priests were that enchanted it. The first and most likely answer is that the Stormhold Crystal is in fact one of the Ayleid stones, whether that be a Varla stone, meaning star stone in Old Aldmeris, or Welkynd stone, meaning sky stone, heaven stone, or literally sky child stone, in again Old Aldmeris. Now these stones or crystals are blue in color, just like the Stormhold Crystal. And these Varla and Welkynd stones were crystals made of meteoric glass that had fallen from the sky. It's a very rare form of ethereal fragment, which was then enchanted by the ancient Aylieds. Varla stones could store magical energy, which could then be used to replenish enchanted items. And Welkynd stones could store magicka, which could then be used to replenish one's magicka. There were also dark Welkynd stones and could store and unleash destructive magic. The Aylieds used these as a security measure. Sadly, the techniques of maintaining these stones was lost to time and died with the Ayleid cultures. Now, the Ayleid also had the 7-star teeth, although these were 7 unique crystals captured by skyships caught directly from the sky. The Aylieds considered starlight the purest form of magical energy, as the stars are holes in reality. The light that shines through is from Aetherius, so anything that falls through these holes, aka falling stars, is pure ethereal magicka. Now, while it would be exciting if the Stormhold Crystal was one of the 7-star teeth, the location of all 7 of them is known, all of which are in high northwestern Hammerfell, not Blackmarsh. The star teeth are also white in colour and not blue. So the Stormhold Crystal being one of the star teeth it's out of the question. However, the star teeth were used to combat Umbraketh, an entity formed out of the pure forces of conflict. So an Ayleid stone being able to absorb and store negative energies, for lack of a better phrase, is something that is known, just as the Stormhold Crystal can store and absorb corruption. Now, the next one, the ancient Argonians also made use of meteoric glass, creating powerful crystals known as Vakka stones, which means sunstones in the Gel language being the Argonian language. These are notably yellow, however. Now, some tribes of Argonian were instructed by their Hist to worship the sun before duskfall and collect the sun's power. These sun-blessed tribes used their Vakka stones to store energy. Sadly, these tribes were betrayed by the Sithis worshipping tribes, and the sun-blessed religion faded into obscurity, much like the Ayleid did with their Varla and Welkynd stones. There is also the Ultima, who have a very similar use of meteoric glass as they create Culanda stones and Molondo stones. But given the Ultima, that being the High Elves, never settled anywhere near the city of Stormhold, well, this history as an explanation for the Stormhold Crystal, it's out of the question, really. Also, the stones are yellow. That doesn't match. And speaking of, given that we know the color of the Stormhold Crystal, that being blue, we can surmise that it is definitely a crystal of Ayleid make. And these Ayleid crystals are known for storing energy of one sort or another, to be released when needed. So the Stormhold Crystal definitely fits the bill. However, it might have been tampered with by a later culture, most likely being the Sun-Blessed Argonians, aka the Aylieds made the crystal and then someone else came along much later and did some enchantments of their own on it. So along with the Sun-Blessed Argonians, there's also another option, as within the Elder Scrolls 1 arena, in the city of Stormhold, there is a faction known as the Conclave of Baal, which was a religious temple that is said to have had prominence across Tamriel at the time. But what is interesting is that Baal, that being B-A-A-L, well, it's never revealed who Baal is. Now straight away we're thinking Molag Bal, but the Baal part of Molag Bal has one A, and the Conclave of Baal, well, Baal has 2 A's, so they're spelled differently. However, in Daggerfall's concept art, we can see that Molag Bal was originally called Moloch Baal, B-A-A-L. It had the same spelling as the Conclave of Baal. So what if this religious cult of who we now know as Molag Bal got a hold of this ancient Ayleid crystal and tampered with its enchantments to harness corruption and then release it upon the world to create strife and enslavement of mortal kind, gathering and farming souls of the now corrupted for Molag Bal? Well, it's just a thought, but a fairly interesting one. It's also worth mentioning that in the city of Stormhold, we can go there in the Elder Scrolls Online, and we can find a Hist Tree that is planted just above an Ayleid ruin. Now, while the Hist Tree is quite small here, the Elder Scrolls Online takes place about 800 years before the game Stormhold does. So let's just imagine 800 years in the future, this Hist Tree is big and strong. Its roots are deep, and its Hist sap has seeped and soaked fathoms into the deep earth. If the Hist Tree were to make contact with some of these Ayleid crystals, it could potentially have the ability to alter and tamper with the Ayleid crystals' magical capabilities. Now, there isn't any real evidence to back this up, apart from the fact that we know the Hist are super ancient, super powerful, and in the past have done some really crazy things, like mind controlling entire races or summoning floating cities from other dimensions. None of those fall into the category of changing the enchantment of crystals, but it's just a thought. Anyway, in the game The Elder Scrolls Travel Stormhold, the Stormhold Crystal is said to have been created by priests of an almost forgotten religion. Well, the Aylieds, the ancient Argonians, and the Conclave of Baal all have members within their societies titled priests. Also, the Aylieds and the ancient Argonians practiced in religions that are now almost forgotten. The Conclave of Baal, which are Daedra worshippers, do not fall into this category, as Daedra worship is most certainly not an almost forgotten religion. So in conclusion, the Stormhold Crystal is most likely an Ayleid Welkynd stone of great power. If we compare it to this Welkynd stone from ESO, we can see they are very similar in appearance. Less likely is that it is an ancient Ayleid crystal that was enchanted by the ancient Argonian priests. Even less likely is that it is just straight up a crystal of ancient Argonian make. This would be less viable as the crystals are yellow and the Stormhold crystal is blue, so it doesn't really match up. And equally unlikely is that it is an Ayleid crystal that was enchanted by the Conclave of Baal. And of course, the most unlikely theory of all is that the Hist here in Stormhold City somehow tampered with the crystal. All of the above are possibilities, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. It's all in a day's work when it comes to investigating the Elder Scrolls series and its many strange stories. So I do hope that you have learned something new about the beautifully mad universe that these wonderful games take place in, the Elder Scrolls. If you have any information, facts, evidence, experience, speculation, theories, or anything to do with the Elder Scrolls Travel Stormhold, I would love to hear what you have to say. If you have any video ideas about what I should cover next, I'd love to hear about that too. So be sure to let me know. I'll look into whatever strange and obscure topics you present. If you did enjoy this video, please do me a kindness and leave a like. Leave a comment with your thoughts and theories on the Elder Scrolls Travel Stormhold, or just any video ideas as well. And of course, if you enjoy this video and want to see more videos similar to this one, please subscribe. It helps me know people enjoy these kind of videos and will result in more of them in the long run. Be sure to click the little bell icon next to the subscribe button here on YouTube so that you will be notified when a new Elder Scrolls video is uploaded. You can check out some of my other Elder Scrolls videos on my channel or a playlist link down in the description. Down there you can also find links to all of my social media. Be sure to check all of that out to keep up to date with what I'm up to. And of course, be sure to check out the merch store. There's a ton of cool stuff on there, most of which was painstakingly designed by myself, but there's also some stuff from other artists as well. Also, be sure to come hang out on Twitch, where we streamed the entire playthrough of the Elder Scrolls Travel Stormhold. Now, if you did enjoy this video and you would like to help support the channel in a more personal way, you can become a patron on Patreon, or you can join right here on YouTube and become a member, or you can give the video a thanks with the little love heart icon down there. As I'm sure you know, all of my time and energy goes into making these videos that I create for you to enjoy, so your support is most genuinely appreciated and welcomed in any and all forms. So thank you very much for watching, thank you for supporting the channel. I've been Camel, and I will see you very shortly in the next video. I'll see you there soon.